Good morning, boxing world. As we all know, this Saturday, June 15th, we got two great events with two dynamic fighters, right? That's going to be featured on their separate cards. Gervonta Davis is going to be facing Frank Martin in the Amazon Prime card, and Subriel Matias is going to be facing Liam Paro. And then at the end of the month, on June 29th in Miami, Florida, you're going to have Teofimo Lopez versus Steve Claggett. Let's be real. We all pick that Teo, Matias, and Gervonta Davis is going to be victorious in their bout. But let's be real. As much as people want to critique Gervonta Davis' resume, his resume has aged pretty well as of late, with the victory of Ryan Garcia, beating Devin Haney, Mario Barrios with the victory he has versus Ugas and his last win. And also Pitbull Cruz, his victory with Rolling. You feel me? So his resume has aged well. We can't further critique his resume like we've been doing it for the past years. But there's only one person that even Floyd Mayweather believes that will give Gervonta Davis a real run for his money. A 50-50 fight. A 50-50 fight, or the closest margin, whether you want to say that Gervonta Davis gets 60-40 versus Teo, or Teo 60-40 versus Tank. Floyd Mayweather once said that the matchup, they asked him about what's the best matchup in the sport of boxing, and he said Teofimo Lopez versus Tank. Now, I agree with Floyd Mayweather. I've said that. I said it personally to Teofimo Lopez that I believe his legacy fight is Gervonta Davis. But in the 140-pound division, I believe that the biggest and the most lucrative, and not lucrative fight, but I think that the best fight is the unification bout with Teofimo Lopez and Subriel Matias. Y'all already know, Subriel Matias, Boricua, Puerto Rican, and shout out to all the Puerto Ricans and stuff like that. This past weekend was the Puerto Rican Day Parade out here in New York City. Shout out to Carolina, San Juan, Bayamon, Aguadilla, all my PR peoples, right? Can you imagine Teofimo Lopez versus Subriel Matias? You already know Teofimo Lopez, Brooklyn's own, Brooklyn favorite son, right now. And you got Teofimo Lopez versus Subriel Matias. Imagine in Madison Square Garden. Imagine Madison Square Garden. Of course, both of these guys got to come with a victory, and I believe they're gonna be victorious in their next outing. I believe that's the biggest, the best fight, not the biggest fight. I believe the biggest lucrative fight is Ryan Garcia versus Teofimo Lopez, but we already know that Ryan Garcia is not gonna be fighting in the 140-pound division. So the best fight at 140 is Teofimo Lopez versus Subriel Matias, and I think that's the toughest one for both of them, in my opinion, and the most accomplishable one. So these fights is going to be highly important. And for Teofimo Lopez, I think that performance is what people are going to be looking for. A lot of people say that Teofimo Lopez, he fights at the level of his competition. And this is why this fight, whether people don't know too much about Steve Claggett, is intriguing because of the reputation of Teofimo Lopez fighting to the level of his competition. But on the flip side of things, we all know when Teofimo Lopez faces an elite fighter, he shows up. So that's what makes a fight with Subriel Matias and Gervonta Davis intriguing as well. So I know there's a lot of people that like to critique Teofimo Lopez. Oh, he fights at the level of his competition. Yeah, but when he fights the likes of, say, Lomachenko, who was regarded pound for pound at the time that he fought him, and Josh Taylor, who was the reigning king in 140, he performed at the highest level. And that's why I think Teofimo Lopez will perform at the highest level versus Tank Davis, and at the highest level versus Subriel Matias. These are the best, three of the best entertaining fighters in the sport of boxing outside of Ryan Garcia, around that division. And of course, Gary Antoine Russell, he's one of my favorite fighters in the 140-pound division in my opinion. He's not a champion, but and also Pitbull Cruz. And that's going to be a good unification bout with Matias or Teofimo Lopez. But I think that Teofimo Lopez and Matias been talking trash to one another. You already know that Teofimo Lopez sent him a contract to fight this past February 8th during Super Bowl week. And Subriel Matias stated that he had, and his team stated that he had a hand injury. So that fight couldn't come to fruition. But he locked down a deal with the Zone, Matchroom Boxing, Eddie Hearn. And I think that was probably the biggest reason why they didn't fight. Because, of course, Subriel Matias was a free agent. If he was a free agent and fighting a one-shot deal for with Top Rank versus Teofimo Lopez, I don't think that would have been a smart business decision. Because then if Teofimo Lopez would have beat Subriel Matias, then what would have happened with Subriel Matias in terms of locking down a multi-year deal, multi-fight deal. So his team was smart. But that doesn't necessarily mean that Matias was scared to fight Teofimo Lopez or anything of that nature. But we got to credit Teofimo Lopez for actually sending the contract. A lot of fighters don't be sending out contracts right away. But shout out to Teofimo Lopez. And we all know, looking at his resume, that Teofimo Lopez don't duck no smoke. Matter of fact, he goes to the smoke. Gervonta Davis, I believe it's a reason why. Remember leading up to the Ryan Garcia fight, and he did an interview with, I forgot, one of them sneakers, one of them hip-hop outlets, and they asked him who he will fight. And when they asked him about Teofimo Lopez, he said, nah. And maybe that's the reason why Floyd Mayweather knows something that probably a lot of people don't know, or people don't want to acknowledge, is that Teofimo Lopez has the speed and power, athleticism just as good, or probably more, than Gervonta Davis. You got to be special when it comes to accuracy, experience, IQ, speed, power, and athleticism to match or to give Gervonta Davis a real run for his money. In the primary fight in the lightweight division, for me, in my opinion, is Shakur Stevenson versus Gervonta Davis. Well, of course, if Vasily Lomachenko still looked very, very good versus George Kambosos, if he still got the greatness in Vasily Lomachenko, I think that's a fight that still could be intriguing to the boxing fans. And maybe I do believe that Gervonta Davis will take that fight as well. But Teofimo Lopez beat Vasily Lomachenko, but Vasily Lomachenko was at his peak and at his own greatness. I think if a lot of people push their haste to the side and push their bias to a side, they will understand that Teofimo Lopez has all the ingredients to give Gervonta Davis the best fight of his career and the 50-50 fight that we've been desperately wanting to see Gervonta Davis in. So these fights may not be the fight coming up this Saturday and coming up the following Saturday, but it's highly important, and I think is already set for Teofimo Lopez, because Teofimo Lopez is going to have to fight fighters that's with other promotional company, because Top Rank got no 140-pounder. They're going to have to co-promote a fight with Teofimo Lopez. It's the reason why he fights Steve Claggett, because there was no opponent available. But this is the sport of boxing. A lot of people go, oh, why are you fighting Steve Claggett? If you look at your favorite fighter, present and past, you got to fight those in-between fights that keep you busy, right? We want these fighters to stay active. Not every fight, it's not normal for a fighter to fight the best and the best and the best. It doesn't happen. That's not the way that the boxing career is moved. So at least Teofimo Lopez is going to stay active. Frank Martin versus Tank is a good fight, and I think the best fight is Subriel Matias versus Liam Paro, and I think he's the one that got the most to prove. Even though that he's a champion, I believe that Matias got the most to prove. But I think by this year, I do think that a Teofimo Lopez is going to face one of these guys, and I think that all these guys have to perform to that type of performance that the fans of the sport of boxing and outside the boxing fan is going to clam over these type of fighters. Right now, boxing needs performance and highlight reels. Subriel Matias and Gervonta Davis in their latest fights have delivered. Teofimo Lopez has to deliver a spectacular performance. He needs to be the takeover when it comes June 29th So then the momentum of either a fight with Gervonta Davis and Subriel Matias is going to be at its peak interest. And I believe that it will be one of the most two lucrative fights in the sport of boxing, and the most interesting fights, because I think that Teofimo Lopez has pinched the nerves of Subriel Matias fans, and of course I want to see how back and forth Teo and Tank will be. Let me know what you think about these potential fights. Let me know what's your pick for this Saturday, and let me know how you think Teofimo Lopez is going to perform. He's going to perform the way that Teo performed versus Josh Taylor, or Vasily Lomachenko, or you think he's going to fight to the level of his competition. Let me know what you're thinking. Let me know what y'all think, and let me know which fight you liked best: Teo versus Tank or Teo versus Matias.